Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 81 of the Best Games Period. I'm your host, Jack Gardner, and with me this week is Daniel Jones.
Hello, everybody.
That's him.
Everybody.
That's how he sounds normally.
Aunt Bethany, you should say hello to everybody. I should say hello to everybody. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody.
Are you doing a puppet bit in an audio medium?
No, I'm just quoting Christmas Vacation. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, because that's what I do. I love that movie, and do you know that that's like the movie for my family? We watch it
every Halloween.
Every Halloween. I don't know why I'm quoting a Christmas movie. It's just because you said hello, everybody, and it made me think of Aunt Bethany saying hello to everybody at the party. Have you seen Christmas Vacation, Jack?
I have not.
Oh, man.
So that went over my head. I was not the audience for that joke. Okay. But I'm sure somebody in our audience was the audience.
Somebody who's listening totally got that before I had to explain it. Guess who starred in that movie, Jack?
Who?
Chevy Chase.
I know that. I thought you were going to hit me with a piece of esoteric trivia.
Oh, no. And
nope.
Guess where you were this week?
I was near Chevy Chase.
You were. You were in Washington, D.C., right next to Chevy Chase, Maryland, where I have family who my aunt and uncle live there. And did you know that Chevy Chase, Maryland is an actual town? I
did not. And I'm going to pretend that that's the case, even though we just talked about this.
Did you know that town was named that before Chevy Chase became Chevy Chase?
I assumed it was named after him for his fabulous performance in Christmas Vacation.
Nope. You'd think, but they did not name a town after him, no. I don't know the story there. Maybe I am just guessing that his agent or somebody was like, you need a snappier name than Joe Robichash. So
is that his actual name, or did you just make that up?
I just made that up.
that was some good improv.
Thanks. So we're gonna name you Chevy Chase because there's this cool town in Maryland called Chevy Chase, and we think that you should be named that, and you're gonna be a star.
Fun fact about me: I always have trouble pronouncing the word Chevy or the name Chevy, which you can hear if you listen to our recent episode on Illbleed with special guests, one of whom is named Chevy.
Oh, yeah.
I have so much trouble saying that name because of Chevy.
Right, because of Chevy. Chevrolet.
Yeah. Chevrolet.
Chevy. Yeah.
Yep.
I wonder if his full name is Chevrolet Chase.
I don't think so.
Maybe.
Wait. It wasn't the Illbleed episode. It was the Super Mario RPG episode. Correction.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Chevy Ray Johnson.
Right.
Anyway. We are so off track this week.
What is this, Jack? What are we doing right now?
Well, right now we are horrifically crashing and burning as we try and desperately to segue into anything else.
I was just trying to segue you back in, but
this is the Best Games Period, where every week we choose a game. Sometimes we take two games and pit them against each other, but usually we just focus on one game, and we try and answer whether or not it is one of the best games, period. And if it does... In effect, does it belong in a video game hall of fame? Does it belong in video game canon? And this week, we are looking at Frictional Games, I think probably their most well-known game, Amnesia: The Dark Descent.
Yeah.
Which, it's October. We're getting pretty close to Halloween. I think when this comes out, it'll be like 1 or 2 days to Halloween.
It'll be Halloween Eve.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we needed to get something spooky because we've been for the most part, pretty upbeat this month. I think the only thing...
Doom's kind of spooky.
You know what? I guess. We also had Illbleed, which is supposedly a scary game.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, Doom, I wouldn't describe Doom as like a scary game, though.
No, not really. No.
It's a very
Doom 3,
empowering game
kind of.
about, giving you a gun and making you feel like the biggest thing in the planet. In the planet. That's a phrase that people use. And it's funny that we're kind of going from the power fantasy that is both original Doom and modern Doom and going the complete opposite direction with Amnesia.
Yeah.
Which is pretty much the anti-power fantasy that a lot of people have for games.
Yeah, it definitely is. But before we get into Amnesia, we should go over the poll from last week.
Yeah.
So, last week, our guest, Joseph Lopes, and myself debated whether Doom 1993 or Doom 2016 should be in the best games period canon.
And there could only be one.
There can only be one. And the listeners voted 2-1 for 93 Doom.
There were more votes than just 3. Right?
Ratio-wise.
Okay.
2-1. 2 votes to every 1 vote for 1993 Doom versus 2016. So, there was actually a lot of love for 2016 Doom, and I think people recognized that was a closer argument than maybe it had any right to be, because 2016 Doom is so damn good.
Yeah, so I didn't listen to the full episode because you kindly edited most of that last week.
Yep.
What was the argument for new Doom over old Doom?
Well, at one point, Joe and I kind of basically agreed that 2016's Doom is a better game, just by virtue of coming out after 25 years of video game design game design refinement, right? And just all the lessons to have been learned throughout the years since the first really popular first-person shooter came out. But because Doom 93 still plays like a dream, it's still a really fun game to play. And because it has had such a lasting legacy that we determined that both of us ended up agreeing that 93 Doom was the best choice of the two. But
okay.
He came into it thinking that he was going to vote for 2016 Doom, and he ended up changing his mind. And actually, when he went back and replayed both of them, he realized how great the original was, and also realized some of the flaws that hold back 2016's version. So, it's a good talk. If you haven't listened to it, my audio is a little messed up. It's not this week, thankfully, but it was a little messed up in that episode, but I think it's still a really fun episode. If you haven't listened to it, go check it out.
Yeah. I mean, it's maybe not the most pleasant experience on your ears, but
it was fine. It's not that bad. You're ridiculous.
It's not. I mean, it's about the same as usual. So
Joe, hey, whatever. Joe sounded good.
Yeah, he did.
I guess it sounded good, but I sounded unprofessional. But anyway, how you been, Jack? Other than going to DC.
I mean, to be honest, not great.
Well.
I mean, that I know I'm supposed to say everything's great, but it's been kind of a rough.
This is America. We don't talk about our feelings.
It's been a rough couple of weeks, which is why you've kind of been holding down the fort, which I really appreciate. But yeah, a couple of my a person in my family passed away, and a friend of mine passed away, and it's been kind of a sad time. But we are still gonna be here, and games are still gonna be here, and you know what? We need to talk about games because
that's what is so good about them, is that you can always go back to them, and that sometimes, no matter how rough life gets, I don't know how to say this without sounding super cheesy and like I'm joking, but I'm not. But like, no matter how rough life gets, sometimes you always have something that can comfort you, and I think video games provide that for a lot of people. Hopefully, some of our listeners included.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that people always talk about with games is like escapism, and I think that belief and that specifically escapism as a phrase is just overused and misunderstood, because I think a lot of games are specifically about dealing with loss and dealing with kind of tragedy, and that's part of what draws us to games. And so games can help us feel a wide range of emotions and a wide range of catharsis, not just violent catharsis, but also emotional catharsis. And they help us feel sad when we need to feel sad. They help us feel happy when we need to feel happy, and they help us kind of get through the tough times. And I don't think that's necessarily escaping from the things that are making you feel bad.
Right.
But anyway,
Super Mario Odyssey is definitely one of those games that is about loss. It's about losing your hat. That comes out tomorrow, or came out this past Friday for those listening.
Yep.
Well, I don't know. I was just trying to lighten the mood a little bit.
I mean, I was gonna try and transition with.
I was actually gonna say, isn't Amnesia? I haven't finished Amnesia, but isn't it about? I get the feeling from the story that it's very much about loss and about coping with loss.
I mean,
am I wrong?
A little bit, but
oh, okay.
Amnesia itself is
the loss of memory.
A loss of something, yeah, and coping with not being able to remember.
But nothing happens to the character, the tragic, before the game starts. I got the feeling that there was some tragedy in his past.
Oh, so
that led him to this place.
Okay, so we're kind of getting into this part of the episode where we actually talk about the game that we're supposed to be talking about.
And also, beware, we spoil games, but this game's too scary for you to even play through, so don't worry about us spoiling it, because you'll never play it anyway.
No, it actually plays with your expectations, because you do go into the game expecting that it's, some horrible thing happened to the protagonist, and, who's named Daniel. So, Daniel, we're going to be talking a lot about you this week. And in reality, the reason that Daniel took the amnesia potion was because he had done so many terrible things to other people. The story itself is actually more convoluted than you might expect from a game that seems like it should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
The beginning of this game, super straightforward. You literally wake up and it's all in first-person perspective, and there aren't any cutscenes, really, that explain anything. You're always in control of your character. And you wake up in this spooky castle, and there's a note there that basically explains, hey, there's this guy named Alexander, and he's at the center of this castle, and you have to go there and murder him.
Kill him,
And I know you don't remember anything, and just know that that's for the best.
But the person talking to you is you in the future.
No, the person talking to you is you from the past.
Oh, right, you from the past. Right.
Before you took the amnesia potion.
Yes.
So it's interesting because for a while you're really not sure what is going on. because it quickly becomes apparent that everything is wrong in this castle. Like, there is this... my favorite part about the note is that basically at the end, there's a P.S. and it's like, P.S. There's a shadow that haunts your every step and is coming to kill you.
Yeah.
Good luck with that. And that's just the end of the letter you left yourself.
Just try to hide it and get away from it.
Yeah.
Like, what?
And that note very clearly kind of spells out the core tenet of Amnesia, which is a complete lack of combat. Not you can fight very poorly. It is you can't fight anything at all. Like, you have no ability to fight anything.
Yeah.
Your only recourse throughout all of Amnesia is to run and hide somewhere, whether it's behind crates or in a cabinet or, wherever. And these monsters will try and get you. And you just have to kind of be quiet and hope they didn't notice where you ran to hide.
Yep.
And
so,
it's... Go.
No, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I had never played Amnesia before last night. Oh, sorry.
Can I just say, I'm very proud of you. Because I remember when you tried to play Slender, and that was... you didn't do so hot. No.
Well, I played through all of Slender. I just got only like 4 of the pages. But I did play until he killed me. So I knew that I wasn't going to make it through this without somehow forcing myself to. So I didn't play all of it still. In fact, I never even saw the monster. I got to the basement where the invisible thing is following you around.
Good job.
That's where I got to. So I had my wife watch me because I couldn't do it by myself. I needed an audience, otherwise I was going to turn it off.
Yeah.
And I needed her to spot me because I couldn't. And the whole time she's just like making fun of it. She's like, "This isn't scary." She's like, "That's not scary. There's nothing happening. This is boring." So I almost turned it off just because she was bored. But didn't. And we played for a while. It takes a long time even just to get to that part.
Yeah.
It took like an hour and a half or so to get to the basement where the invisible monster is chasing me around.
Yeah. I think like a lot of what makes Amnesia brilliant is the sound design.
Yes.
B, the level design, I think, is actually really, really good. And the way that everything is paced. So, if you just turned the sound off and sprinted through the areas and you knew what to do, you could get through this pretty fast. But the way the game messes with your mind and the uncertainty it creates about where you need to go, or what exactly you need to do. Like, it doesn't really hold your hand a ton.
Right.
That gives it time to kind of seep into your bones and freak you out.
Yeah, well, I think time is the key word there. They take their time. It's not even a super long game all in all, is it? I mean, probably like 8 hours, 6 hours?
Yeah, about that long. Yeah.
Okay. So the first, like I said, hour and a half, I still had not seen an actual monster. There's a lot of like wind blowing, doors flying open on their own, sounds, lights flashing, like the screen going blurry. There's a lot of creepy noises. And you do, at one point, I did see a monster kind of walking around briefly, like a brief glimpse of something.
Yeah. And
then that's it. I think...
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I just want to get this out. But like, one of the core tenets of good horror is things are much scarier when you don't see them. What you don't see is scarier than what you see. So the first half of Jaws was so much scarier because you never saw the shark. Once they showed the shark, it was still scary, but not nearly as scary as that first half where the unknown is really what scares you. And, personally, as a kid, I was always afraid of swimming in lakes where I couldn't see the bottom because what I couldn't see was what scared me. I didn't know what was there. And I always pictured just like monsters reaching up with these black hands, like trying to grab me. And instead it was just the weeds at the bottom of the lake. But, that always scared me because it was my imagination was what scared the most. And from what I played, Amnesia definitely understands that. And not many games really, really get that.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's very explicitly baked into Amnesia, the Dark Descent's kind of gaming DNA, because one of the things that kind of affects the perception of the game is your sanity, and you lose sanity by staying in the dark for too long,
right?
And by looking at horrible sights.
Yep.
And so the game discourages you from looking at creatures and, kind of inspecting these monstrosities on a mechanical level, not just like, oh, it's so horrible, I must look away, and forcing you to in a cutscene or something. Instead, you're actively trying not to look at them so that you don't go insane.
Right.
And of course, there are always some people on the internet like, I took a screenshot of this creature. It's not scary at all. But, I mean, it's not really that scary to look at Jaws either if you just see a screenshot of Jaws.
Right.
Most movie monsters, if you just see a screenshot of them,
they're not
scary. Yeah. It's all about the context and presentation and kind of almost the ceremony of horror that surrounds a creature that makes it scary.
That's a good term.
Yeah. I coined it.
Okay. I'm gonna hold you to that.
And so it's this really well put together game, and I like the way that it is truly a Dark Descent. The farther you get into the game, the weirder and stranger kind of this mystery and the locations become. And so you only got to the invisible creature, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Then what happens?
So that's relatively early in the game.
Yes.
Did you figure out how to deal with it?
I just jumped around on boxes.
Okay.
And then I got too scared and we turned it off.
Okay. I really wish I could have seen you discover that creature, because it doesn't reveal itself right away, and it's invisible.
Yeah.
But so there aren't actually that many different creatures in the game. It's really the invisible creature, which is called like a crayneck or something like that.
Okay.
It's a weird name. And then there are the fleshy kind of humanoid monsters, which are just referred to as gatherers.
Is that because they gather victims?
Yeah, they gather people and victims.
Yeah.
But basically, this game is kind of constructed like a tragedy rather than like a horror story.
Sure.
It almost does that Braid thing where you get to the end and then you see kind of everything in reverse and realize you were the monster all along. And the basic story, as it is revealed throughout the game, is that Daniel was on this expedition in the desert, and he found this strange orb, and has like this otherworldly quality. He's like, oh man, this orb is so cool. I'm going to take it home. And he kind of became obsessed with it and was trying to learn more about it. And he found out, hey, there are other orbs around the planet. So he like started reaching out to other experts, trying to figure out what it was. And he starts learning that a lot of the people he reached out to are turning up dead. And he doesn't exactly know why, but he feels like something's kind of hunting him. And so he responds to this invitation from a baron called Alexander von Brennenburg, I believe.
Okay.
And goes to his castle.
Okay.
And Alexander's like, hey, I can help you kind of deal with this thing that's hunting you, because there is this supernatural entity that they refer to as the Shadow that's hunting you. And it wants the orb back because it's this actually super powerful supernatural thing. And we can use the power of the orb to, kind of keep the shadow away, and you'll be okay. And I'll actually teach you how to do these rituals to protect yourself. And so Daniel becomes kind of his apprentice. And he just kind of goes along with what Alexander tells him to do. And at first it starts out with, I believe, animals, and then they move to human sacrifices, and they're criminals. And then then Daniel goes with Alexander, and they murder and kidnap a farm family. And, Daniel's just kind of like, well, this isn't right anymore. I mean, I could kind of like say this, it's okay if we're killing a murderer, but that was a family with children. I don't know if I'm not okay with this anymore, because they also have to like torture them and like get them in the right mindset to be sacrificed.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. You end up going through like the castle's prison system and through like their torture chambers and stuff like that. Probably the creepiest thing is that there's a flashback about this time they stuffed a person into this bronze bull like statue and then lit a fire under it and extracted the blood, and that was pretty horrifying.
Oh.
But part of what I like about Amnesia: The Dark Descent is that almost all of the horror elements are entirely in your head. Like, it's not graphic. Like, it's not...
Right.
What part of my problem with the Outlast franchise is that all of it is, look at how gross this is. Aren't you scared?
Yeah.
Like,
it's very in your face.
We've impaled someone on a giant spike and you have to watch them die. Isn't that scary? And it's like, it's very on the nose.
Yep.
And like, that's fine. Like that, for a lot of people, I think that's scarier to look at. And I think that probably makes for a scarier movie. But I think Amnesia: The Dark Descent taps into what makes playing a game scary.
Right.
And it subverts everything that you would expect about a game in order to achieve that scariness, which made it very revolutionary for its time.
Yeah. Absolutely. But especially if you think about the state that horror games were in at the time that Amnesia came out. Like now...
Which was 2010.
Yeah, 7 years ago. Now, horror games, like, you're getting big budget games like Resident Evil 7 that follow that formula to a degree.
Yeah.
Even though Resident Evil 7 gives you weapons and makes you a little bit more empowered, it takes time to get there. And, just... There's been other games like Soma from Frictional Games, and other games like the Outlast series that were very much inspired by Amnesia. So, like, that kind of game is commonplace now, but at the time, like, the horror genre was games like Dead Space and Resident Evil 5, and, like, they were closer to action games than horror.
Yeah. They're action games with jump scares.
Right.
Yeah.
It was very, very different. And I don't know. I'm not completely sure that the horror genre of games has really, after having played some of it now, like, I don't think that the lessons of Amnesia have really been learned. I think it's been more of, like, let's just do this spooky game that has a bunch of, well, like you said, jump scares that will look cool on live streams and Let's Plays. And there's not much attention paid to pacing. Although from what I hear about Resident Evil 7, it does. But like the Outlast games, man, there's no pacing in those games. Almost right off the bat, you've got this guy chasing you. And and even Frictional Games' own Soma, right off the bat, like half an hour in, you have a monster that you have to avoid. And it's actually not super scary. It's just kind of annoying. It's very different. Soma's a really interesting game. I don't like playing it, but the story is really interesting to me. But anyway,
just to kind of touch on the points you just made there, like, I disagree, but I'm looking at it from a slightly different perspective because, I think that Amnesia: The Dark Descent kind of paved the way for more walking simulator-esque games.
Sure.
Because
there was, like, Abduction. Was it Abduction? No, what was that game that came out this year? Another horror one. Abduction
did come out this year.
Was that the scary one?
No.
That was the Mist-like one. There was another horror type game that. Anyway, go ahead.
But I think that, like, it paved the way for people to realize that, hey, you can just have a game about someone walking around without fighting. Like, just that basic idea was crazy at some point.
Right.
Like, and Amnesia is much more a adventure game. Like, it is what you would think of as, I guess, an adventure game with some horror elements to it. Or maybe like the closest thing games have to, like, a psychological thriller, almost.
Mm-hmm.
And it's much more about its story and the world and existing in that world, which is something that we value in our indie games today. Like, I don't know about What Remains of Edith Finch, but, like, something like The Vanishing of Ethan Carter or
Gone
Home or That Dragon Cancer. Like, a lot of that stuff is built on similar foundation as this game.
Edith Finch and even Firewatch have tones of horror, or at least mystery.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
And of course this is like a different thing, but I'm talking just like base level. This cracks the door open for the games that, you know, are commonplace now, but just didn't exist really. Right.
That's fair.
And I also think that it undeniably had an effect on horror. Like,
oh, for sure.
Amnesia for video games, like, Amnesia was all anyone could talk about for years if you were talking about horror games.
I mean, a lot of people still consider it to be, like, the scariest game ever made.
Yeah, and it's if you were to teach like how to do horror, right? I think this is like the textbook example you would go to.
Yeah.
For video games.
For games.
It, like I was saying, it subverts the power fantasy. You literally cannot fight. So you have to think differently than what a lot of games, teach you to do. And maybe a lot of that is dependent on the surrounding culture of games and how most games are about empowerment to some degree.
Yeah.
So you have that. You have its really kind of odd physics gameplay, which we haven't really touched on.
Yeah.
But you can basically pick up any object in the environment and like rotate it around and look at it and then throw it.
Does that ever come into play when you encounter a monster? Do you want to throw anything at the monsters?
No, it's mostly for like puzzle solving. For monsters, you want to
just
be running away
run
from
away
them.
and hide. Yeah.
Yeah. And yes, but specifically, like I've been heaping a lot of praise on. I've been heaping a lot of praise on Amnesia: The Dark Descent, and I do stand by it, except that there is this section, maybe 2/3 of the way through the game, where you have to collect a bunch of stuff, and it kind of opens up a little bit, and I think it's really dull. That, like, a lot of people kind of push for more off-rails experiences, and I don't necessarily think that horror benefits from that all that much.
Because it's very much about pacing, and you do something like that, and it throws the pacing off a bit.
Right, and there's like a lot of backtracking, and it gives people time to acclimate to an area, and it's not...
It makes it less scary, because the more time you spend in an area, the less mystery there is to it. Right. Because, like last night, just last night, I didn't know where I was supposed to go. I had my darkness settings, like, set too high, apparently. It was just too dark, and I couldn't see there was a switch on a wall. It took me forever to see it, because I just could not see it. So I ended up just standing in this room for like 5 minutes talking to Coley and waiting for something to happen, because the hallway and the room got darker, and I was like, well, maybe I'm just meant to be stuck here and something's going to happen after a specific amount of time, So just like spooky sounds were happening. The screen was going black and wobbly and staticky, but nothing actually happened. And eventually it just got to the point where I was wandering around, and yeah, that area was not scary anymore because I had spent so much time just wandering around in it. So I see what you're saying.
Yeah. And I don't personally find it fun when you have to, when you've kind of been going along at a good pace throughout a game, and you just have to kind of put everything on hold to find all 6 pieces of this thing. I even roll my eyes at that in RPGs. I think it's like a tired trope.
Yep.
But that kind of design decision aside, it's an interesting... I also think that this game has an interesting narrative, because, like I was telling you, it kind of turns everything you would expect on its head and leaves a lot of questions. And it's actually kind of interesting because there are multiple endings. And your ending...
Hey, Jack, is it interesting?
Yes. Did I say that word like 5 times?
Yeah, just about.
Yeah, great. Well,
but why is it interesting?
Here's the thing. You have these multiple endings, and you can kind of choose which ending you want to get, because, and what you choose is dependent on kind of your opinion of Daniel and Alexander. Like, do you think he deserves to get off scot-free for what he did? Like, does he deserve some kind of punishment for sacrificing families and literally becoming a murderer in his own right? Or does he deserve the same punishment as Alexander? Or, should Alexander get what he wants? Like, what do you think the result of this situation should be? Because it's going to come to a peak, a point, and you have to decide where it goes from there. The end is basically Alexander performing this ritual, and while he performs the ritual, you have the option of, like, just kind of throwing aside the pylons that are helping it happen, and you can just, like, put an end to the ritual, or you can just let it happen, or you can throw some weird otherworldly guy's head into the portal that opens, and that sucks you into a different universe. And it kind of ends on an ambiguous note. But
all right, that does get... You said it's convoluted. That's definitely convoluted.
Yeah. It's not quite as simple as go into center of castle and kill guy.
Right.
P.S. Something else is gonna try and kill you. But I like... Part of what I like about Frictional Games is that they do weird things. Like, this is very clearly someone's vision, or at least a small group of people's vision, and it has rough edges that make it weird, and it's not focus tested to death, and it's allowed to exist in a weird place. If you had to guess, Daniel, how many people would do you think work at Frictional Games?
If I had to guess, probably like a dozen.
You would be correct. That is about right.
But from the production value, it does seem like there's more, for sure.
Yeah, like, especially, like, I played a little bit to refresh myself. Amnesia looks real good, and it came out in 2010, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
There aren't many games you can say that came out like several years ago that still look good by today's standards. I think Amnesia kind of holds up visually. And part of that is the art design,
Yeah, definitely. Well, we haven't really touched on that, but I do think that the lighting, the design of the world, the castle, and just the way... I mean, just the way it all looks, it's super spooky, and it's a different kind of environment for games. It's maybe not, it's gothic horror, basically. It's maybe not the first time that had been used in games, and it's not the first time it had been used in horror, for sure, but it's the first time I remember, like, that it basically that it was used really effectively. In a lot of horror games, like, the Resident Evil games took place in a mansion or a city or a village, or Alone in the Dark took place in a mansion, and stuff like Dead Space took place in space, in space stations. This was not that. It was gothic horror. It took place in 1836 or whatever it was, and that was really interesting. And the way that they animated everything, the way everything was lit, the fact that you had to light torches yourself if you wanted light, which they encouraged you to, because you go crazy if you don't have light. And then when you turn on the light, it's not only beautiful, but it's like comforting in a weird way that light is comforting to people. It's super interesting, and it's well done. And yeah, I would definitely say that it holds up really well, because I Yeah, I had no problem playing it and feeling immersed. I never felt like Coley did. My wife did. She was laughing at it, but I never felt unconvinced.
Well, and so I think part of what makes me find Amnesia: The Dark Descent so interesting is it very clearly shows the difference between playing something yourself and watching something being played. Because there are two
Right.
They are two vastly different experiences.
Yep.
And if you just watch Amnesia: The Dark Descent, you aren't going to get nearly as much out of it as if you were just playing it yourself. Because there is something that happens when you play, and I'm sure that there is a much more scientific term or artistic term for it, but you invest yourself into the character you are playing. Whatever part of your brain that activates when you are on stage, becoming another person and acting, you do the same. You invest the character with part of yourself.
Yep.
And
there is a term for that, and I just can't think of it right now. But yeah.
Yeah, you in some sense become that person. And it does create a very, especially in horror, a very visceral feeling. Like, you are much more afraid of that dark corner or those things. And I think that disconnect is part of what made Amnesia specifically this huge internet hit.
Right.
Like, I think that Amnesia was probably the first time I became aware of a lot of, like, Let's Players on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I think it's part of what helped companies realize, this people playing games on YouTube is like a thing. like a really big thing that can drive sales. Because the series that Frictional had been working on prior to Amnesia was called Penumbra. And there are 3 of them, and almost no one knows that game off the top of their head.
Or they certainly didn't know it before Amnesia.
No,
right.
No. Like, I think most of the people who played Penumbra only played it after having played Amnesia.
Right.
And the Penumbra series is kind of where Frictional play tested a lot of the elements that became important in Amnesia.
Right.
And so they're interesting to play. I don't think we'd ever talk about any of them on this show. Maybe one of them would have an honorable mention. I'm not sure.
I could see that. Won't be me, but sure.
But yeah, they're interesting.
Yes.
But the Amnesia released to just an incredible numbers of sales after, and just by word of mouth, really. Like,
yeah, it was Let's Plays that made Amnesia popular.
I mean, they didn't spend anything on marketing.
No.
There were no commercials on YouTube for Amnesia: The Dark Descent.
No.
Except the Let's Plays.
Right. And it kind of proved that Let's Plays don't really detract from sales. Sure, you probably had people who watched the Let's Play and didn't play the game or didn't buy the game because they were too afraid to, but then you probably had a lot of people who ended up just getting the game because they wanted to, because it looked so cool in the Let's Play, and because there is definitely a disconnect between playing it and watching it. It's not nearly as scary to watch it as it is to play it.
Yeah. Well, and so it and this is as of 5 years ago, it sold 1.4 million copies.
Yeah.
Which, again, this is a studio composed of like 12 to 16 people. That's a lot. That's a lot of copies of a game. And, like, that's enough for them to have funded I believe 2 more games after that.
Well,
that didn't really need to be huge successes.
There was a DLC for it, and then there was Machine for Pigs, which was made by the Chinese Room, who went on to make Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, and now aren't really... I don't know what's up with them. I think it's just Dan Pinchbeck and... oh my god, I can't remember. Jessica Curry.
They're an odd studio.
They released all of their staff just recently.
Really?
Over the summer.
I didn't hear about
yeah,
that.
they let go all of their staff. And they're trying to kind of redefine the direction of the studio. But anyway, so they made that, and then Frictional Games released Soma just a couple of years ago. And that's where they're at. But yeah, I do think that Amnesia pretty much was able to fund them for that whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that this isn't necessarily anything to do with Amnesia. It's more to do with Frictional. But they're one of my favorite studios to just kind of see what they do.
Yeah.
Because they do have that human touch that I was talking about. Like they have the weird edges, and they do weird things. And I like what they do with horror because it's really interesting to me. Like Soma, so again, I'm going to compare it to Red Barrels, who they're the developer that
Outlast
handles Outlast. Yeah. And Outlast 1 and 2 are kind of doing the same thing as each other. Like different takes, but same methodology, kind of, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Still the same in-your-face kind of design decisions. When it comes to Frictional, their approach to horror is very different in Amnesia: The Dark Descent and Soma, because Soma is less about kind of the gameplay aspect of horror and more about like asking you existentially horrifying questions about existence.
Right.
And horrifying you in a completely different way. And it does have some of the monsters walking around, but those aren't the main point.
They're almost just like distractions. They're just obstacles to get by. They're not as scary as Amnesia.
Yeah. Because and I think part of that is a plus for Soma, and part of it is kind of just frustrating for Soma.
Right.
But I like that they're willing to kind of take those risks and different directions for horror.
I think my problem with Soma was I think I would have really liked that game if it was just a straight walk-in sim and no monsters. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah. I get what you're saying, and I kind of agree with you.
Yeah.
But it's Frictional is interesting. And I'm saying interesting a lot. I'm really sorry. I don't know why my brain is stuck on that word. But they are kind of the hotbed of innovation for the entire horror genre right now. Ever since Amnesia kind of came to the fore. Like, I don't know anything else that has affected horror to such a degree since Amnesia, or even really before Amnesia. Like, you'd have to look all the way back to like the Super Nintendo days and Resident Evil to find like an equivalent kind of definitive horror game.
The Clock Tower series, maybe, which ended up like being the inspiration for Resident Evil, maybe.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, like Clock Tower, Resident Evil, and then probably you would go after that. Amnesia: The Dark Descent.
Yeah. I mean, there was a time when it looked like Dead Space was maybe that game, or actually maybe Resident Evil 4. But Resident Evil 4, I think, ended up having more of an impact on the action genre than with Gears of War and other games that adopted that third-person camera than really horror. And it,
gosh, we need to talk about Gears of War at some point.
Yeah, we definitely do. We've had requests. But yeah.
Oh, really?
Okay. Yes, we have. Yeah. I think you're right. Like, Amnesia is absolutely one of the most influential horror games ever made. And rightfully so, I think. But, yeah. Why do you think it became such a Let's Play phenomenon? Because it really did. I mean, it's synonymous. I think the name Amnesia: The Dark Descent is synonymous with Let's Plays and the rise of Let's Plays. But why? Like, is it just because it was scary and that it just hit at the right time?
You know, I think, and I was watching actually a Let's Play of Amnesia earlier too. I think that there is a certain satisfaction in watching something and thinking to yourself, you know, that's not that scary, or like I could handle this.
Yeah.
And then also seeing someone freak out about that same thing that you feel comfortable, like at least like you could manage it, and seeing someone freak out about it, like there is I think maybe a stronger comedic response to that. And seeing people freak out, because what's more popular on the internet than watching someone freak out? And there's that aspect to it, but I also think that in 2010 there was a drought of games that would possibly be considered scary. Like,
right.
Again, Resident Evil 4 might have been considered scary by some people, but it's not.
There were times when that game scared me. Yeah.
But not, like, it's not, like, really scary.
No.
Like, it's not like watching a horror movie.
It is more
scary.
intense than scary.
Yeah. That's a good way to phrase it. Or especially not Resident Evil 5. Like, that's even farther away from scary.
Right.
Like, that game ends with Chris Redfield punching a volcano or something.
No, he shoots a rocket into a volcano and kills Wesker.
He's just built like a fridge. I can see him punching a volcano. And then on the other side, you have this very toned down, very strangely down to earth in comparison game about 1800s, Victorian era stuff, and it's supernatural and it's weird, and it has that feel of like, oh, nobody's heard of this, because you don't see ads for it everywhere. And
right.
So I think it had the mystique of like being a cult game,
right,
while also having the mass appeal of watching people freak out, and then you kind of want to like get it to show your friends, or have your friends play it and watch them freak out.
Yeah, it became kind of a party game in a way.
Yeah. And so I think that just all these things kind of came together and elevated Amnesia. And I think it deserves it. Like, we're at the part of the show now where we talk about whether
we have to say
our final thoughts.
Yep.
And I think, it does have flaws. Undoubtedly it has flaws. But the things that it got right are just so right.
Yeah.
That it has redefined, like, both, indie games and big budget games for the past 7 years. I challenge anyone who's listening to come up with a game that has had a similar impact in horror, because there isn't one, really. A lot of the older horror genres swung into action and found out that, oh, maybe that's not the strong suit, and then kind of swung back towards Amnesia. I think you're right. There was Dead Space, and then there was Amnesia, and these two takes on horror kind of went their separate ways. And I think ultimately that Amnesia had more effect even beyond horror with, like I was saying, with other walking sim games. And the other path, the Dead Space path, kind of went more commercialized, I guess. They went mainstream, man. Rest in peace, Visceral.
Yeah, so sad.
That's too bad.
Yeah, if I've learned... So wait, you haven't said. Is it a best game period?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Like, I don't see how this game would not get on our list, and I feel like it would... I feel like we're going to get some no votes because it's like too on the nose that it would be a yes, and that there are some people out there who kind of share Coley's opinion of it being kind of boring.
Right.
I don't get that at all from this game. But I do think that, there are different strokes for different folks, and like some people find the Ring super scary, and other people, like me, laugh throughout the Ring.
Oh my god, I love the Ring. I find it to be scary.
And it kind of depends, but I think even just looking at it, taking your own emotions out of it, I think that there's way too much that this game dud. This game did right. This game did right, and had the influence it had. Like I don't see how it's a no. Like a reasonable no. If you have a reasonable no that is well thought out, I would love for you to harangue us about it and tell us how wrong we are. Because I actually do like hearing dissenting voices when we post these shows. I like reading those comments.
Me too.
Find them interesting.
Me too. So one of the things, what I was just going to say was, one of the things that I've learned doing this show through 81 episodes now, and then some honorable mentions and whatnot, is that games don't luck into popularity, and they certainly don't luck into greatness. And that for a game, and it's not typical for a game to become really popular and successful without having real merit. And that's because games require, like, it's not like a movie where I feel like tastes in film can be somewhat more subjective, because, even though I might find sitting through Transformers movies to be a painful exercise, other people find it to be really enjoyable. Whereas if a game is painful to play, it's painful to play for pretty much everybody. And some people might find, like, The Last of Us to not be a fun game. And that's, sure. There's those kinds of things. So tastes do vary. I'm not saying they don't. But if a game is good, it typically has if it's popular, it's typically because it has merit. It is good. It is doing something right. And Amnesia, I don't think it just lucked into its popularity. I think that there is a lot of tension built up throughout that opening act of that game. And that's on purpose. That's not just, it's not just that way just to be that way. It's because they wanted to build tension, and they understood that was a core tenet of horror, and that you have to build up mystery and tension, and they spend a lot of time doing that. And then when they finally reveal what is the monster or whatever, you don't have time to really look at it too much because you have to run away from it. Whereas in other games, action games and stuff, Resident Evil and whatnot, and Dead Space, you spend a lot of time looking at those monsters because you're shooting them. Amnesia, you don't have the opportunity to do that. And all of this kind of combined to really make this a scary game. And you can see its influences in everything from Slender to Silent Hills, or whatever it was called, PT, and Resident Evil 7, the Outlast games, and like you said, games, walking sims like Gone Home and Edith Finch and what's that kid? Vanishing of Ethan Carter. Like, it's everywhere, and if you were to list the 10 most influential games of the past 10 years, it might make that list. And I think that's not just because it was popular with Let's Plays, but because it was actually a really good game from what I could see. So yes.
Couple things. One, we should totally do an episode on PT. I would be down.
Yeah. I think it merits an episode.
I have thoughts on PT. So
all right.
But thought number 2, I think that there are going to be some people who maybe misunderstood what you mean about things being popular being good. And I just want to I think I kind of get what you're going for. So
I don't think a game becomes super popular unless it has its positive qualities.
Yeah.
I mean, name a super popular game that you think is just an objectively bad game.
I think that there are a lot, like Call of Duties. A lot of Call of Duties, I think, are objectively bad games.
Sure, but I guess I disagree. Because I actually think there's a lot of merit in those games. I think they're not.
But then you also
so I guess you're right.
To like Transformers, and I think that there are good aspects of Transformers. Like, a lot of games have good aspects to them, and like there are good aspects to Call of Duty too. Like a lot of Call of Duty games have good aspects.
So, but in other words, it's playable. You can play it.
And I don't think it should be taken to mean that being able to play something makes it good.
No.
Like, that should just be, like, base level competence.
No. Right.
But I think
Call of Duty became popular because it's a really good formula. You have to admit that. The multiplayer formula is very smart and overused for sure. But it was very smart and very well executed. And the single-player campaign for Call of Duty 1, 2, 4, and some might even say Black Ops were really good.
My only point is that, like, there are a lot of games that, you know, aren't super popular that are super good, and we've talked about them on this show.
Yes.
And that there are, a lot of games that are popular that maybe aren't necessarily great. Like, they're still good.
Goat Simulator is a bunch of trash.
They have some good elements to them. And so I think you're right, but there is also an aspect of, like, marketing and...
Listen, just throw everything out that I just said, all right? Just cut it and take it and throw it out, because I obviously didn't get my point across. I just mean that this is not just a popular game, it is a good game. It is a very good game and a very influential game, and it is the best game, period. So,
right. There. I get that what you're saying is that there is usually a reason why something is popular, and a lot of the time it's because it has some good element that speaks to a lot of people.
Is that what I mean, Jack?
Sure.
Thanks for clarifying
You're
for me. We should wrap up.
We should.
Yep. So,
Yep.
Jack.
Daniel.
Thank you for joining me tonight.
You're
for
welcome.
episode 81 of the Best Games period.
Public service.
And thank you, good listeners, for joining us for this spooky Halloween Eve episode of the Best Games period. Coming up just around the corner is Extra Life. Jack, tell everybody about Extra Life, because it's like right here. It's 5 days away.
Heck yeah. So, honestly, this is the last show we're going to be doing before Extra Life happens, the big game day. And honestly, you can fundraise the entire year. You don't have to just do it on one day. This year, it's November 4th, which, as we have noted several times now, is coming up. It's actually this week on Saturday. And a lot of people around the United States and Canada are going to be playing games, all kinds of games, tabletop games, video games, maybe some outside sports games. I don't know. Any kind of game. In order to raise money for Children's Miracle Network hospitals. And not just that.
Hunger Games.
Those people... What? Don't play Hunger Games.
Okay.
That's the opposite goal of what Children's Miracle Network is all about.
Shit.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, you can actually sign up. When you sign up over on extra-life.org, you can choose which Children's Miracle Network hospital you want to raise money for, so you know exactly where your money is going, and 100% of it is actually going to the hospital. So all of the money that you raise goes directly to the hospital. No funds are taken out from the side. Nothing's, they're not taking like 5% for the CEO's paycheck, nothing like that. 100% of it is going directly to the hospital to help sick and injured kids. And that's awesome. So you know what? You should head on over to extra-life.org and sign up. And get your friends to sign up. And then do something fun on November 4th. You don't have to do the full 25-hour marathon. You can do it, have some friends over for a fun game night. And then, just be like, hey, donate $10, $20. And you know what? Bada bing, bada boom, that all adds up. So, get that done. Go do it. Go do it. Go do it. Go do it. And then you can also, if you want to get involved with some people in your local area, you can head over to community.extra-life and bounce around the forums, meet new people, make friends. What are you doing if you're not making friends and having a good time? So, go do that. And guess what? You can also find this very podcast over on there as well, along with a bunch of interesting articles about games and more games and stuff like that. So head on over there. And I think there's even a couple Humble Bundles that are maybe just one Humble Bundle at the moment. The Day of the Dead Humble Bundle by Double Fine Productions, which benefits Extra Life. So you can actually pick up some games at whatever you want to donate. You could even get them for $1. That's several games for $1.
That's pretty good.
And guess what? You can say, hey, I want that $1 to go to Extra Life. So you can actually raise some money and get games and then go have a good time with those games.
I like having a good time.
And maybe
with
your
games.
friends.
Yeah, and friends.
And then maybe raise some money for sick and injured kids while you're doing that.
Yeah, raising money.
Win, win, win. Win, 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 win. Always winning. Never stop winning.
Making those kids feel much better.
So that's the deal with Extra Life. Get on board.
Do it.
And help out some kids and have some fun.
Great.
I got real into that.
Yeah, because you should, because it's right around the corner. Are you going to be on the Game Informer live stream, Jack?
I will be around it.
Okay.
I don't know if I will be physically visible
you should
on
hop
it.
on it. You need to hop on it, and you need to hold up a sign that says, subscribe to our podcast, Best Games, period.
Heck yeah.
If you don't do it, I'm not donating anything to Extra Life.
Oh, that's not true.
That's not true. All right. Community.extra-life.org is just one of the places where you can find this podcast every Monday. You can also find it on GameInformer.com and Facebook.com/bestgames, Twitter.com @bestgames, Libsyn, our hosting site, SoundCloud, iTunes, where you can leave us a review and help us out. That would be awesome. Also, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, all of that jazz. And you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/bestgames, where you can get extra bonus content for just $1 or more a month. And that's that. If you like the show, tell your friends and help us out. Help us get more viewers and listeners, really. So, till next time, happy Halloween, everybody, and have a fun Extra Life day, everyone. Jack.
Daniel.
I will see you and all the listeners on the flippity dippity.
Heck yeah. And you know what? Please just retweet or tweet about us or tell your friends.
Yeah.
Because, we don't advertise this show or anything, and the only way people know that we're here is if you guys talk about it. Just even be like, hey, these guys are stupid. They think Doom is better than Doom.
And we know that there are people who really like our show. I don't know why. I don't know why they do, but...
It's a good show, Daniel. That's why they like it. It's a good show.